Founder and executive director of National Security Institute, Jamil Jaffer. He's also former counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for National Security at the Justice Department. So, Jamil, let's start here. Is it a good idea for the U.S. to send cluster bombs to Ukraine?
Well, look, Arthel, the United States is supporting Ukraine in its war against Russia. Russia started this war. Russia's abusing cluster bombs in massive amounts. These aren't ideal weapons, but of course, part of the problem here is that we've slow-walked our support to Ukraine in this entire conflict. It's never been clear that we wanted Ukrainians to win. We haven't given them the weapons they need. So now we're needing to put in a significantly different type of weapon. And that's part of the challenge here. If we'd given them tanks, missiles, F-16s early on, this conflict might very well be over.
And meanwhile, as you alluded to, Russia has been committing war crimes throughout Ukraine. So why is it controversial for the U.S. to send cluster bombs to Ukraine?
Well, the U.S. has started to reduce our use of these weapons. We did use them in Afghanistan. We did use them in Iraq. But we've decided that the danger to civilians is significant enough that we want to be careful about how we use them and perhaps even terminate our use of them. At the end of the day, though, we do have 3 million rounds of these approximately in our stockpiles. And given that the Ukrainians are in a fight for the very survival of their country, this is what they need now to take the fight to the Russians and ultimately get them out of Ukraine, an invasion that the Russians themselves triggered first in 2014 and again just last year.
The U.S. ambassador to Ukraine was on with Griff Jenkins in the last hour. I want to play the sound for you and then we'll talk about it.
We will use them in a very responsible way. We are fighting on our country. We are liberating our own villages and towns. We take care about our people, and our military has already shown how they are capable of liberating our towns without actually huge damage or destruction, contrary to Russians who are simply occupying, destroying, raping, killing, and everything else. So I know it's a hard decision, and I know it's difficult weapons, but we do need them, and we are very grateful.
Were you able to understand what she said, and what's your reaction, Jamil?
Yeah, Ambassador Markarova is right. At the end of the day, the Ukrainians need every weapon they can to win this fight. This is a situation, Arthel, where our adversaries across the globe, China, Russia, Iran, they're cooperating to invade Ukraine. And this is part of the challenge. We've got to treat this for the threat that it really is. This is not just about Ukraine. It's about the safety and security of Europe and our allies around the globe. And our adversaries come up against us. That's why we need to give the Ukrainians everything they need to win this war and win it decisively.
All right. And while I have you, Jamil, as you know that you've got $700 billion in yearly trade with China. U.S. Treasury Secretary Yellen says the two largest world economies can interact in ways that are uncontroversial to both governments. This, of course, with the backdrop of China sending warships and fighter jets near Taiwan. So is it necessary and okay for both to happen at the same time?
Well, part of this is the challenge, Arthel. China is seeking the ultimate defeat of the United States. They don't want to cooperate or collaborate with us, right? What they seek is an end to U.S. leadership of the world and their replacement of us as leaders of the world. We have to recognize that Taiwan, just like Ukraine, is part of that effort. The Russians are working with the Chinese as well, as are our other adversaries. And we need to recognize that when China says we want to talk about trade and investment, they're talking about using American dollars to finance an ultimate effort to defeat the United States. We need to recognize it for what it is.
So then talk about the posture that the U.S. military is taking in response to China's warships and fighter jets near Taiwan.
Well, the Biden administration has been at times tough on China. They put restrictions on their semiconductors. We've conducted freedom of navigation operations in the region. The president himself has talked about that we would support Taiwan with troops. The problem is at every turn, we walk that back. When the president says we'll send troops, the White House then turns out and says, well, what the president meant was we're going to send weapons. We talk about restricting semiconductors, then the president sends the CIA director, the Secretary of State, and now the Secretary of Treasury to make up for it and apologize to China and say, we want to collaborate with you on trade and investment. At the end of the day, Arthel, the key is that China views us as an adversary. We have to recognize that's what they're saying to their people. We have to recognize that's what they're doing, and we need to treat them as such.
And in our last 30 seconds, as things stand now between the U.S. and China, is there a national security risk, Jamil?
Absolutely. The Chinese have threatened Taiwan over and over again. They've sent missiles, jets. They've threatened American warships in the region. They've threatened American airplanes in the region. And we've stood by and let it happen. we have to understand that they are likely to come after Taiwan, whether that's now or in 2, 3, 4 years from now. We have to decide, are we going to be there to defend our friends in Taiwan, just like we have supported our allies in Ukraine? We need to do that and more for Taiwan, because at the end of the day, Arthel, China is the largest threat facing our country in the long run.
Quite a predicament. Jamil Jaffer, former counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for National Security. Jamil, thank you as always. Eric?
Thanks for having me, Arthel.